Welcome to the National Museum of Military Vehicles. This museum has been built around the world's largest private collection of military vehicles. More than 450 vehicles, artillery pieces, naval vessels, and aircraft ranging from 1897 through the present. Most of these vehicles are on site, although a few of them are off-site for restoration or are dedicated parade vehicles. Almost all of our vehicles are operable. The focus of this museum is to tell the stories of how these vehicles were used and to remember the valor of the service members who fought and sometimes died in them.
June 9th, 1944. The beach is firmly in Allied hands now. The work of the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard and the combined Allied sea forces has been done. Work not without a price in men and materiel.
Our General George C. Marshall Gallery tells the story of the American experience in World War II. The gallery begins with the story of amphibious landings, including the specialized vehicles created to make these landings successful. The Normandy D-Day landings are the most famous, but similar landings took place in North Africa, Italy, southern France, and throughout the Pacific Theater during the war. The United States could not have won World War II without these amphibious vehicles, which enabled our troops to hit the beach under enemy fire. After amphibious landings, the Marshall Gallery leads you into North Africa in the European theater and the Battle of Bataan in the Pacific theater. General MacArthur's entire army of 75,000 U.S. and Philippine troops surrendered at the Battle of Bataan, followed by the Bataan Death March and the death of 10,000 prisoners during the march to POW camps. After Bataan in North Africa, you will enter the U.S. Combat Vehicles Rotunda, where you can see examples of every major ground vehicle the United States used in combat during the war. Our ability to create all these vehicles in just 3 years was due to the strength of the U.S. economy as well as its complete mobilization to support the war effort. One lesson learned in World War II is that the strength of our national economy and the strength of our national security are two sides of the same coin. Next in the Marshall Gallery is the Red Ball Express. The Red Ball Express is little known today, but during the war, it was famous as an example of American ingenuity and what our troops could do under duress to stay in the fight against Germany when there were limited ports we could use to supply American, British, and Canadian troops after the breakout from Normandy. If a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, Allied troops were only as strong as the Red Ball Express after the Battle of Normandy. Improvised efforts like the Red Ball Express have matured into what today is an American system of military support and logistics that is the strongest in the world. We conclude the Marshall Gallery with examples of late war campaigns, the unconditional surrender both of Nazi Germany and of Imperial Japan, and thoughts about the cost of war. Over 76 million people died in World War II. Many more were wounded. Trillions of dollars worth of civilization were destroyed. World War II showed that appeasement and isolationism may be well-intentioned, but that they backfire as policies of national security and cost more lives than they save. Lessons learned from World War II made the United States determined to nip aggression in the bud in the future, fight smaller wars earlier, and avoid World War III. These lessons set the stage for the limited wars we fought in Korea and in Vietnam that are covered in our General Lewis Chesty Puller Gallery. The Korean War began in June 1950 when Communist North Korea, supported by the Soviet Union and China, launched an unprovoked surprise attack across the 38th parallel in an attempt to force a communist government on democratic South Korea. Our Korean War exhibits take you to the United States' last stand at the Pusan perimeter, where the United States nearly lost the war after only 2 months of fighting that left us trapped in a tiny corner of South Korea with our backs against the sea. From there, you move to Incheon, where an American amphibious assault behind North Korean lines forced North Korea to retreat from the Pusan perimeter. After Incheon comes the battle for Seoul, the capital city of South Korea. Seoul changed hands 4 times in 9 months, as one side after the other gained the upper hand in back-and-forth fighting. From Seoul, you will move into our diorama about fighting at the Chosin Reservoir near the North Korean border with China. As our armed forces approached China's border, China attacked us, leading to the longest retreat in American military history and raising the risk of World War III. President Truman avoided World War III by adopting a policy of limited war, stalemate, and ultimately an armistice that remains in effect today. American casualties totaled 34,000 Americans dead and more than 103,000 wounded. The impact of our intervention in the Korean War can be seen in the contrast between the economic success, standard of living, and freedom enjoyed by South Koreans today compared with their North Korean counterparts. From Korea, you will transition into our presentation of the Vietnam War. One of the first displays you will see in our Vietnam War exhibits is a Huey helicopter that served in combat in Vietnam, first with the Army's 1st Cavalry Division and then with the Navy SEAL Seawolf Squadron. This exhibit helps explain why Vietnam sometimes is called the Helicopter War. Helicopters revolutionized American warfare in Vietnam. After our helicopter display, you will move into a diorama about the role of women in service. More than 7,000 American women served in Vietnam. All of them were volunteers. 8 of them were killed in action. Our diorama includes an oral history quote from a nurse who says, "My being there meant one less man had to go." Our Vietnam War veterans fought and died in an extreme range of circumstances. Some served in road convoys, others fought in jungle. Some found themselves in urban combat. Still others fought on outposts, fire bases, or on rivers in small boats. 3.4 million Americans fought in the Vietnam War. More than 58,000 Americans died and 153,000 Americans were wounded. These figures do not include the hundreds of thousands of American veterans who died or were harmed by their exposure to Agent Orange during the war, or who suffered from PTSD. The American people owe a huge debt and thank you to all of our Vietnam War veterans and their families. We tell their stories in this museum the best we can. When you exit the General Lewis Chesty Puller Gallery, you will enter our General George S. Patton Gallery. Exhibits in the Patton Gallery will rotate from time to time and include small artifacts and display cases as well as vehicles. Highlights include a Dodge touring car, the first motor vehicle used in combat by the United States in 1916, vehicles used in World War I, and a remembrance of John J. Blackjack Pershing, commander of the American Expeditionary Forces in Europe during World War I. Another must-see in the National Museum of Military Vehicles is our weapons vault. Our prized firearm is the musket that fired the first shot at Bunker Hill, the Private John Simpson musket. We know that Private Simpson fired the first shot at Bunker Hill because he was court-martialed for doing so. He violated the order to hold fire until he could see the whites of their eyes, even though he hit his target with his early shot. The musket then stayed in his family until it was acquired for this museum in 2019. This musket symbolizes the role of the citizen soldier, the origins of the Second Amendment, and the beginning of our nation. Another highlight in the weapons vault is a revolver once owned by the famous frontier lawman Wyatt Earp. A third highlight is a model 1873 Winchester owned by the Lakota war chief Rain in the Face, who fought in Custer's Last Stand, the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876. Don't miss the machine gun in a briefcase. The trigger is hidden underneath the briefcase handle. The muzzle fires directly out the side of the briefcase when the briefcase is closed. Finally, if you have not already done so, please visit our outdoor wall of reflection when you exit the museum building. The quotations on the wall behind the M60 main battle tank remind everyone why we honor and thank our veterans and veterans' families for their service and sacrifice on behalf of the United States of America. Please enjoy your visit here at the National Museum of Military Vehicles. We encourage you to take one of our free daily tours to get the most out of your visit.